The silver bracelet catches the light every time a semi passes. Mary keeps her eyes on the highway, but the flash pulls her attention back to the dashboard. Small, delicate links Natalie gave her last Christmas, with a hug that lasted just long enough to feel genuine. The afternoon sun slants through the windshield, turning the asphalt ahead into a ribbon of heat shimmer. Her hands rest at 10 and 2, the same way she's driven for 20 years, the same way she does everything. Careful, measured, trying not to take up too much room. Ethan scrolls through his phone in the passenger seat, earbuds dangling around his neck. He's 14 and already taller than her, his legs folded awkwardly in the space designed for someone smaller. They're driving back from a college visit. Too early, Mary knows. But Ethan wanted to see the campus, and she wanted to give him something to look forward to. The guidance counselor had smiled when Mary mentioned it, that specific smile adults use when they think you're trying too hard. Mary had smiled back. She's good at that. So, she says, keeping her voice light, what did you think? Could you see yourself there in a few years? Ethan shrugs without looking up. It was okay. Lots of brick buildings. The library was beautiful, and that student center. Yeah, it was fine. He glances at her, then back at his phone. You're still doing dinner with Natalie and Greg tonight, right? Mary nods, though something in his tone makes her pause. That's the plan. Why? Just asking. He shifts in his seat, angling his body toward the window. The highway narrows ahead, orange construction signs forcing 2 lanes into one. Mary eases into the merge, letting a pickup truck slide in front of her. A sedan behind her honks, impatient, and she lifts her hand in apology even though the driver can't see it. The traffic thickens, brake lights flaring in sequence like a slow pulse. Mary grips the wheel tighter, feels the tension creep up her forearms. She hates this stretch of road, has ever since the divorce, when driving anywhere felt like moving through syrup, every decision requiring more energy than she had. Ethan's voice cuts through the hum of the engine. If she dies here, no one will notice. Mary's foot almost slips off the gas. The car in front of her pulls ahead and she has to accelerate to close the gap. What? Nothing. Ethan keeps his eyes on his phone, but his thumb has stopped scrolling. Ethan. Her voice comes out sharper than she intends. What did you just say? He exhales, long and slow, the way he does when he's been caught. I saw texts, on your laptop. Last week when I was looking for that permission slip you said you'd signed. The highway stretches out in front of her, the same as it did 5 seconds ago, but everything feels tilted. What texts? Natalie and Greg. He finally looks at her, guilt written across his face and the set of his jaw, the way he won't quite meet her eyes. They were talking about a trip. Greg said something like finally being free of the third wheel, and Natalie laughed. There were a bunch of messages. I didn't mean to read them, but you did. Mary's hands are numb on the wheel. She can feel her heartbeat in her throat. I thought you knew. Ethan's voice is small now, younger than it was a minute ago. I thought maybe you guys had some kind of joke or something. But then at breakfast you were talking about tonight and you seemed excited and He stops. I'm sorry. Mary forces herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way the therapist taught her after David left. The bracelet glints again as a truck roars past, and she has the sudden irrational urge to roll down the window and throw it onto the asphalt. Instead, she signals, checks her mirror, and pulls into the right lane. A rest stop sign appears a quarter-mile ahead. She takes the exit without saying anything. The parking lot is half full, scattered with sedans and RVs and long-haul trucks idling near the far edge. Mary pulls into a spot away from the entrance, shifts into park, and sits. The engine ticks as it cools. Ethan doesn't move. How long ago? Mary asks. Last Tuesday. The texts were from like a few weeks before that. 2 weeks. Mary replays the last month in her head. Dinners at Natalie's house, the girls' night they'd planned for next weekend, the long phone call after Mary's car broke down, and Natalie had offered to drive her to work. She tries to remember if there were signs, small cracks she'd ignored because it was easier to keep moving forward than to stop and look closely. But all she can see is Natalie's smile, the way she'd lean in during conversations, the texts that always started with thinking of you, love. They were joking, Mary says, testing the words. People joke. Ethan looks at her now, really looks, and she sees something in his face she doesn't want to name. Pity, maybe. Or recognition. Mom. One of the messages said you make everything about your pain. Greg said you're exhausting, but Natalie feels responsible. The air in the car is too thick. Mary opens her door, steps out into the parking lot. The asphalt radiates heat even though the sun is starting to dip. She walks toward a bench near the edge of the lot, sits and stares at the highway. Cars blur past, endless and indifferent. Ethan follows after a moment, sits beside her, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "I'm sorry," he says again. "It's not your fault." Mary's voice sounds strange to her own ears, flat, distant, like she's reading lines. "You didn't do anything wrong. Are you going to talk to her?" Mary thinks about the dinner reservation, the text she'd sent Natalie this morning with 3 exclamation points and a heart emoji. She thinks about 12 years of friendship, of being the godmother to Natalie's daughter, of staying late after every dinner party to help clean up because Natalie always looked so tired, and Mary wanted to be useful. She thinks about the bracelet on the dashboard, and the necklace before that, and the scarf the Christmas before, each gift wrapped in paper that said, "I see you, you matter." She pulls out her phone, opens the thread with Natalie. The last message is from this morning. "Can't wait for tonight. Been too long." XO Mary types slowly. "Running late, rain check?" The response comes in less than 30 seconds. "No worries, babe. Actually relieved. Greg and I need a night. Love you." Mary reads it twice. Then she locks her phone and sits with Ethan as the trucks hiss past, feeling something inside her go very still and very quiet. The drive home is silent except for the hum of tires on asphalt. Ethan keeps glancing at her, then away, then back, like he's waiting for her to shatter. Mary keeps her hands steady on the wheel, her eyes on the road, and doesn't say anything. She doesn't trust herself to speak yet. The words are there, piling up behind her teeth, but if she opens her mouth, she's not sure what will come out, anger or grief or the kind of empty laugh that means something important has broken. When they pull into the driveway, the house looks the same as it did this morning. Same faded blue shutters, same crack in the porch. Step Mary keeps meaning to fix, same row of terracotta pots Ethan painted in elementary school lined up along the railing. She turns off the engine and sits. Ethan unbuckles his seatbelt but doesn't move. "Mom, I'm okay?" She says it automatically, the way she's said it 1,000 times since David left. "I'm okay. I'm fine. We'll figure it out." The words have become a reflex, something she offers before anyone asks. Ethan doesn't look convinced, but he nods and gets out of the car. Mary follows, grabs her bag from the back seat, and walks into the house. The kitchen smells like the coffee she made this morning, burned down to sludge in the pot. She dumps it, rinses the carafe, and sets it in the dish rack. Then she opens her laptop. The emails are easy to find once she knows what to look for. They're not hidden. Natalie never thought Mary would go searching. The thread is long. Months of messages between Natalie and Greg. Casual observations about their lives that Mary appears in only as punctuation. Maya called again. Same crisis, different day. That one is from March, right after Mary's father died, and she'd spent 2 weeks calling Natalie every night because the house felt too empty, and she didn't know what to do with her hands. "She's exhausting, but I feel responsible," Greg had written back, and Natalie had replied with a crying laughing emoji. Mary scrolls further. There's a message from June. Maya's emergency was she couldn't pick a Netflix show again. Another from August. "I love her, but my God, does everything have to be a production?" And then one from last month, after Mary had called Natalie crying because Ethan had gotten into a fight at school and she didn't know if she was failing as a mother. "She needs therapy, not me. I'm not equipped for this." Mary closes the laptop. Her hands are shaking, so she presses them flat against the table until they stop. She hears Ethan moving around upstairs, the creak of floorboards, the sound of his door closing. The house settles into its evening quiet, the kind of silence that used to feel peaceful and now just feels hollow. She pours a glass of wine she doesn't drink. It sits on the counter, turning warm while she stands at the window, watching the neighbor's cat pick its way across the fence. The sky is fading from blue to purple, the streetlights starting to flicker on. Mary thinks about every time she called Natalie, every crisis she narrated in real time, because she thought that's what friendship was, showing someone the messy parts and trusting they'd hold them with care. She thinks about Natalie's voice on the other end of the line, always patient, always listening, and wonders how much of it was genuine and how much was performance. Ethan appears in the doorway, his hair damp from the shower. "Are you okay?" Mary turns from the window. "I'm figuring out the difference between being loved and being tolerated. Turns out it's a pretty big gap." He crosses the kitchen, leans against the counter beside her. He's gotten so tall this year, his shoulders filling out, his face losing the softness of childhood. Sometimes Mary looks at him and can't find the boy who used to climb into her lap during thunderstorms. Other times, like now, she sees both versions at once, the kid he was and the person he's becoming, and it makes her chest ache. "What are you going to do?" he asks. "I don't know yet." She picks up the wine glass, sets it back down. "I keep thinking I should be angrier, but mostly I just feel tired. You're allowed to be angry." "Maybe." Mary opens her phone, scrolls to her photos. The album with Natalie goes back years. Girls' trips to the coast, birthdays, lazy Sundays at farmers' markets. In every picture, Mary is leaning in, smiling wide, her arm around Natalie's shoulders. Natalie is smiling too, but there's a distance in her eyes that Mary never noticed before. Or maybe she did notice and chose to ignore it. The way you ignore a strange noise in the car because acknowledging it means something expensive is about to break. She zooms in on a photo from last summer, the two of them at a vineyard. Mary's face is sunburned, her hair a mess from the wind. Natalie looks perfect, makeup intact, smile measured. Mary remembers that day, how Natalie had sighed when Mary ordered a second glass of wine, how she checked her phone through lunch and then apologized, said work was crazy. Mary had felt guilty for taking up her time. She closes the photos and sets her phone face down on the counter. "I think I need to go to bed." Ethan nods. "Do you want me to, I don't know, make you tea or something?" Mary almost laughs. "I'm supposed to be taking care of you." "Yeah, well," he shrugs. "Maybe we can take turns." She reaches out, squeezes his shoulder. "Thanks, kid." Upstairs, she changes into the oversized t-shirt she sleeps in and lies on top of the covers. The ceiling fan turns slow circles, blades cutting through the dark. Mary stares at it and replays conversations in her head, listening for the subtext she missed. "You're so brave," Natalie used to say when Mary talked about the divorce. Mary had thought it was a compliment. Now she hears the rest of the sentence, the part Natalie never said out loud. "You're so dramatic. You're so needy. You're so much." She thinks about the girls' trip they'd taken 2 years ago, right after David moved out. Mary had cried on the beach, ugly sobbing that she couldn't hold back, and Natalie had rubbed her back and murmured soothing things. But 3 days later, Natalie posted a photo on social media with a caption about healing energy and sisterhood, and all the comments were about how wonderful Natalie was for being such a good friend. Mary had liked the post. She'd even commented, "Couldn't do this without you?" Sure. What could go wrong? Sleep doesn't come. Mary lies awake listening to the house creak, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the distant sound of a dog barking. At some point, she hears Ethan's door open, his footsteps in the hallway, the bathroom faucet running. Then silence again. She closes her eyes and tries to picture tomorrow, but all she can see is the rest. Stop parking lot, the highway blurring past, the bracelet catching the light. Morning arrives gray and cold, the kind of October day that feels borrowed from November. Mary makes breakfast on autopilot, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice in the glasses, with the faded cartoon characters Ethan has outgrown, but she can't bring herself to donate. He shuffles into the kitchen still half asleep, his hair sticking up in the back. He sits, eats without talking, scrolls through his phone. Mary watches him and realizes she's performing calm, the same way she performed friendship for 12 years, making herself small and smooth and easy, trying not to be too much. Her phone buzzes on the counter. She doesn't have to look to know it's Natalie. Ethan glances up. "Are you going to check that?" "Eventually." Mary refills her coffee, even though she's already jittery from the first 2 cups. Her hands need something to hold. The phone buzzes again. Then a third time. Mary picks it up, reads the messages. "You okay? Feel like you've been distant." Did I do something wrong? "Hello?" Mary sets the phone face down and sits across from Ethan. He's watching her with that careful expression he's worn since yesterday, like she's made of glass and might shatter if he speaks too loud. "What are you going to say?" he asks. "I don't know." She stares at the bracelet, which she brought downstairs this morning and set on the table between the salt and pepper shakers. It looks smaller in the daylight, cheaper. The kind of thing you buy at the last minute when you've forgotten you're supposed to bring a gift. If I tell her what I found, she'll say I'm overreacting. If I just fade away, she'll tell everyone I got weird and distant for no reason. So what's the third option? Mary picks up the bracelet, turns it over in her palm. The clasp is loose, has been since February, but she never mentioned it because it felt ungrateful. I stop apologizing for taking up space. She opens her messages, types slowly. Her thumb hovers over the send button for a long time. Then she presses it before she can change her mind. I think we've been holding on to something that ended a while ago. I'm grateful for the years, but I need to step back. The typing indicator appears immediately, 3 dots, pulsing. Then they stop, start again, stop. No message comes. Mary locks her phone and stands. She finds a small box in the junk drawer, the kind that holds jewelry or spare keys. She places the bracelet inside, closes the lid, and writes Natalie's address on a shipping label she prints from her computer. No note. Nothing that requires explanation or invites response. Just the return of something that never really fit. You're really doing this, Ethan says. It's not a question. I'm really doing this. Mary sets the box by the door, where she'll remember to mail it tomorrow, or the day after, whenever she's ready. The rest of the morning moves slowly. Mary answers work emails, throws in a load of laundry, wipes down the kitchen counters. Normal tasks that feel surreal, like she's watching herself from a distance. She keeps expecting to feel something big, rage or relief or the kind of cleansing sadness that comes with endings. But all she feels is tired, and beneath that, something that might be the beginning of clarity. By afternoon, the gray sky has darkened to slate. Rain starts to fall, light at first, then heavier. Mary stands at the window and watches it bead on the glass. Her phone has been silent since this morning. Either Natalie is regrouping or she's already writing her version of events to share with their mutual friends. Mary wonders which story Natalie will tell, if she'll be the hurt friend abandoned without warning, or the patient martyr finally freed from an obligation. It doesn't matter. Not really. Mary can't control the narrative once it leaves her hands. Ethan comes downstairs around 3, makes himself a sandwich, and joins her at the window. They stand side by side, watching the rain. You want to talk about it? He asks. Not yet. Mary glances at him. But thank you. For what? For telling me. I know that wasn't easy. He shrugs, but she can see the tension leave his shoulders. I just didn't want you to keep showing up for someone who wasn't showing up for you. Mary nods. She thinks about all the times she showed up, early to help set up parties, late to help clean, available at midnight when Natalie needed to vent about her mother-in-law or her job or her daughters. School drama. Mary had thought that's what love looked like. Being available, being useful, being whatever shape fit the space someone else needed to fill. Come on, she says, let's go sit on the porch. They grab sweatshirts and settle into the chairs Mary bought at a yard sale last spring. The porch roof keeps them mostly dry, though the wind occasionally blows rain onto their feet. The street is quiet, just the sound of water hitting pavement and the distant hum of traffic on the main road. Tell me about the college visit, Mary says. For real this time, not the polite version. Ethan leans back, crosses his arms. It was okay. The campus was nice. I liked the library. But I don't know if I liked it because I actually liked it or because everyone kept saying how great it was and I didn't want to seem ungrateful. He looks at her. Does that make sense? Yeah. Mary pulls her sweatshirt tighter. It makes a lot of sense. They sit in silence for a while, watching the rain. Mary feels something loosening in her chest, a knot she's been carrying so long she forgot it was there. She thinks about the highway yesterday, the moment Ethan's words landed and the world tilted. She thinks about the rest stop, the parking lot, the terrible clarity of sitting still while everything kept moving around her. I'm not going to call her, Mary says, more to herself than to Ethan. Okay? I'm not going to explain or justify or apologize. Good. I'm just going to be done. Ethan reaches over, squeezes her hand once, then lets go. They sit until the rain slows to a drizzle, until the light starts to fade and the streetlights flicker on. Mary thinks about tomorrow and the day after, and all the days stretching ahead that she'll have to fill with something other than performing for an audience that was never really watching. It feels terrifying. It also feels like the first breath after being underwater too long. Inside, she makes dinner, pasta, salad, garlic bread from the freezer. They eat at the table instead of in front of the TV, and Mary asks Ethan about his classes, his friends, the book he's reading for English. He talks, and she listens, and for the first time in longer than she can remember, she's not composing a story in her head to tell someone else later. She's just here, present, paying attention to her son and the way the kitchen light catches his face and the sound of rain still falling outside. After dinner, she opens her laptop and creates a new document. At the top, she types, "Things I like." Then she stares at the blank space beneath it. The cursor blinks, patient. Mary tries to think of something, anything, that's hers, that she chose because she wanted it and not because it made her easier to be around. The list should be simple. Everyone has things they like, but her mind is blank, or maybe just crowded with 12 years of adapting to someone else's preferences, laughing at jokes she didn't find funny, agreeing to plans she didn't want to make. She closes the laptop without writing anything. It's okay, she has time. That night, she sleeps better than she has in months. No dreams she can remember, no waking at 3 a.m. to replay old conversations. Just darkness and quiet and the sound of rain against the window. When she wakes, the box with the bracelet is still sitting by the door. Mary picks it up, turns it over in her hands, and sets it back down. She'll mail it tomorrow. Or maybe the day after. Whenever she's ready. 2 days pass like slow water. Mary goes to work, answers emails, sits through a meeting about quarterly projections that feels like it's happening in a different language. She nods at the right moments, takes notes she won't remember later, and drives home through traffic that barely registers. The box with the bracelet migrates around the house, from the entryway to the kitchen counter to the coffee table, always in her peripheral vision, never quite making it to the post office. On the third morning, Natalie finally replies. Mary is pouring cereal when her phone lights up. She reads the message twice, sets the phone face down, then picks it up and reads it again. Wow, didn't realize you felt that way. Guess I misread 12 years. Ethan appears in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. Is that her? Yeah. What did she say? Mary shows him the screen. He reads it, his jaw tightening the way it does when he's trying not to say something he'll regret later. That's manipulative. I know. Mary locks her phone and slides it into her pocket. It's designed to make me feel guilty, like I'm the one throwing something away instead of just acknowledging what's already gone. Are you going to reply? Mary thinks about it while she finishes making breakfast, while Ethan eats standing up because he's running late, while she packs her lunch and finds her keys. She thinks about all the ways she could respond, the explanations she could offer, the evidence she could cite, the careful language that might make Natalie understand without making Mary look vindictive. She composes 3 different versions in her head, each one softer than the last, each one apologizing in some small way for noticing she'd been erased. Then she thinks about the rest stop parking lot, the stillness she felt sitting on the bench while trucks roared past, the way the noise faded into background and all that remained was the simple, terrible truth. She had spent 12 years trying to earn something that was never actually offered. She opens her messages and types, I don't think either of us misread it. I think we both knew, and I stayed anyway. She hits send before the familiar panic can set in. The voice that says she's being too harsh, too direct, too much. The message delivers. No typing indicator appears. Mary puts her phone in her bag and goes to work. The day drags. She eats lunch at her desk, declines an invitation to happy hour, and leaves exactly at 5. On the drive home, her phone rings. Natalie's name lights up the screen. Mary lets it ring through to voicemail, her hands steady on the wheel. At the next red light, she listens to the message. Natalie's voice is tight, higher than usual, stretched thin with the kind of emotion that sounds rehearsed. Mary, I don't know what Ethan told you, but I think there's been a massive misunderstanding. Those texts, if you read them out of context, I can see how they might seem bad, but that's not. We joke around, you know that. Greg and I joke about everything. It doesn't mean anything. A pause, a breath that catches like she might be crying. I can't believe you're throwing away our entire friendship over something like this. We should talk. Please call me back. Mary deletes the message. Then she sits in her driveway for 10 minutes, engine off, watching the evening light fade through the windshield. She thinks about the night after her divorce was finalized, when Natalie took her to dinner at the Italian place downtown. Natalie had ordered wine, insisted on paying, held Mary's hand across the table while Mary cried into her napkin. It had felt like love. It had felt like being seen. 3 weeks later, at a birthday party for one of Natalie's coworkers, Mary overheard Natalie telling the story to a group by the kitchen. She was a mess, poor thing. I took her out, paid for everything. She's been struggling, you know, and just let her get it all out. Someone had to be there for her. The other women had nodded, murmured sympathy, told Natalie she was such a good friend. And Natalie had smiled, basking in their approval, while Mary stood in the doorway holding 2 glasses of wine and realizing she'd just been narrated into someone else's hero story. She'd ignored it then, told herself she was being paranoid, ungrateful, too sensitive. She'd handed Natalie her wine and laughed at something someone said and spent the rest of the party making herself small. Not anymore. Inside, the house is dark except for the glow of Ethan's laptop in the living room. He's sprawled on the couch, headphones on, working on homework or watching videos. Mary can't tell and doesn't ask. She drops her bag by the door, hangs up her coat, and goes to the kitchen. The box with the bracelet sits on the counter next to a pile of unopened mail. She picks it up, turns it over, sets it down. Ethan pulls off his headphones. Did she call? She left a voicemail. And I deleted it. Mary opens the fridge, stares at the contents without seeing them. She said I'm overreacting, that I'm throwing away 12 years over a misunderstanding. Ethan closes his laptop and sits up. But you're not overreacting. No. Mary closes the fridge. I'm not. She thinks about the girl's trip to the coast 2 summers ago, the one where she cried on the beach and Natalie rubbed her back and took the photo that ended up on social media, with the caption about healing and sisterhood. Mary had liked the post. She'd commented. She'd sent Natalie a long text afterward about how grateful she was to have someone who understood. What she hadn't known, what she couldn't have known until Ethan found those messages, was that the day after they got home, Natalie texted Greg, "Exhausting weekend. Em cried literally every day. I know she's going through it, but my God, I need a vacation from my vacation." Mary had seen that message yesterday, buried in the thread with dozens of others just like it. Small cruelties dressed as observation, complaints framed as concern. A running commentary on Mary's life narrated to an audience of 1, dissecting every phone call and coffee date and moment of vulnerability into evidence that Mary was too much, too needy, too broken to handle. She sits at the kitchen table and opens her laptop. The document she started 2 nights ago is still there. Things I like. The space beneath it is still blank. She closes it and opens her photos instead, scrolls back through years of images. There she is at Natalie's daughter's birthday party, holding the cake while Natalie takes the picture. There she is at the farmer's market, carrying both their bags while Natalie samples cheese. There she is at the restaurant, at the park, at the theater, always half a step behind, always leaning in while Natalie leans slightly away. Mary opens a new folder and starts moving photos. Not deleting them, not yet, but separating them, creating distance between who she was and who she's trying to become. The task takes longer than it should. Her finger hovers over each image, looking for evidence that it was real, that somewhere in those 12 years there was genuine affection beneath the performance. Some photos she keeps, the early ones mostly, before Mary's divorce, before her father died, before she became someone who needed saving and Natalie became the one doing the saving. There's one from a concert 8 years ago, both of them laughing, faces flushed with heat and happiness. Mary stares at it for a long time, trying to remember what the joke was, what they were laughing about. She can't. But the laughter looks real. She keeps that one. The rest, hundreds of them, go into the new folder labeled Archive. Not deleted, not forgotten. Just filed away as evidence of a time when she didn't know the difference between being loved and being needed. Ethan appears with 2 mugs of tea. He sets one in front of her and she looks up surprised. "When did you learn to make tea?" "YouTube." He sits across from her. "I also learned how to fold a fitted sheet, but I don't think that's useful right now." Mary almost laughs. "Thank you." They sit in comfortable silence, steam rising from their mugs. Outside, a car drives past, headlights sweeping across the kitchen wall. The refrigerator hums. The clock above the stove ticks forward, each second identical to the last, but somehow adding up to something different. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan says. "Sure." "Do you miss her?" Mary considers the question. "I miss who I thought she was, but I don't think that person ever existed. Or maybe she did at the beginning, and then something changed. I don't know." She wraps her hands around the mug, feels the heat seep into her palms. "Mostly I miss the version of myself who could believe in it. Does that make sense?" "Yeah." Ethan takes a sip of tea, winces at the heat. "I think so." I spent so long trying to be easy, Mary says. Easy to be around, easy to love, easy to keep. I thought that's what you had to do. Make yourself small enough to fit into someone else's life without causing problems. But the smaller I got, the less I existed. And she was okay with that. She liked me better when I was disappearing. That's really depressing, Mom. I know. Mary drinks her tea. It's too hot and slightly bitter, and she loves it. But I think I needed to figure it out. I think I needed to stop apologizing for taking up space. Ethan nods. They finish their tea without talking. Then he goes back to his homework and Mary stays at the table, laptop open, staring at the blank document. Things I like. She types slowly. Morning coffee before anyone wakes. It's not much, but it's a start. The next morning, Mary drives past the post office without stopping. The box with the bracelet sits on the passenger seat, and she glances at it twice before pulling into the parking lot of a coffee shop she's never been to. Inside, she orders a latte and sits by the window, watching people walk past with their dogs and their strollers and their Saturday morning errands. Nobody knows her here. Nobody expects anything. She pulls out her phone and opens the email Natalie sent late last night, a long, carefully crafted message that reads like a legal brief. Mary skims it, hurt and confused. Always been there for you. When your dad died. When David left. The girls' trip where I paid for everything. The time I drove you to the mechanic. How many times I listened when you needed someone. Each line is technically true. Each line is also a transaction, evidence cataloged and presented as proof of debt owed. Mary reads it once, then again, looking for the moment where Natalie acknowledges the messages, the jokes at Mary's expense, the casual cruelty dressed as concern. It's not there. Instead, there's only hurt feelings and confusion, the narrative reframed so that Mary is the villain. Cold, ungrateful, suddenly cruel, without cause. Mary prints the email from her phone to a nearby library printer she'd set up the night before, walks over to collect it, folds it carefully, and slides it into the recycling bin outside the coffee shop. She doesn't need to keep it. She doesn't need evidence. She knows what happened. Back in the car, she finally drives to the post office. The line is long, Saturday morning rush of people mailing packages and buying stamps. Mary waits her turn, hands the box to the clerk, pays for shipping, and walks out into the parking lot with empty hands. It feels lighter than she expected. Not cathartic, not the big, sweeping relief that comes at the end of movies when everything resolves. Just a quiet acknowledgement that some things end not with drama, but with the simple act of putting them down and walking away. A week later, Mary drives Ethan to his friend's house. They take the highway, the same route as the college visit, and pass the rest stop where everything shifted. Ethan glances at her, and she knows he's thinking about it too. The parking lot, the trucks, the moment his words landed and the world tilted. "Do you ever hear from her?" he asks. "No." Mary keeps her eyes on the road. She sent one more email after the first one. Longer, sadder, more detailed. I read it once and then deleted it. What did it say? That she's hurt. That I'm punishing her. That she doesn't understand what she did wrong. Mary signals, changes lanes. She cited every time she'd been there for me, every crisis she helped me through, made it sound like I owe her something for being my friend. That's messed up. Yeah. Mary thinks about the email, the careful language, the way each paragraph built a case for Natalie's innocence and Mary's cruelty. But I get it. She genuinely doesn't understand. In her version of the story, she was a good friend who put up with a lot, and I'm the one who walked away for no reason. She probably believes that. Are you going to set the record straight? Tell people what really happened? Mary considers it. No. She'll tell her version, and I'll tell mine to anyone who asks, and most people will believe whoever they want to believe. That's how it works. She glances at him. I used to think the truth mattered more than anything, but sometimes people aren't interested in the truth. They're interested in the story that makes them feel better about themselves. They drive in silence for a while. The highway is less crowded than last time, traffic moving steady and smooth. The October trees are turning, bursts of red and gold against the gray sky. Mary cracks the window, lets cold air rush in. So you're just done? Ethan asks. You're not going to try to explain or... I'm done. Mary's voice is steady. Some people love you best when you're broken. It makes them feel whole, and I'm tired of breaking myself into pieces so someone else can feel like a hero for holding the dustpan. Ethan is quiet for a moment, then, "That's a good line. You should write that down." "Maybe I will." She drops him off, waves to his friend's mom, and drives home through neighborhoods she barely sees. Her mind is somewhere else, turning over the past 2 weeks like smooth stones. She thinks about the voicemail, the emails, the careful way Natalie constructed her defense without ever actually apologizing or acknowledging what Mary found. She thinks about how easy it would be to respond, to lay out the evidence, to make Natalie admit what they both know is true. But Mary doesn't want an apology. She doesn't want acknowledgement. She wants to stop giving energy to someone who only valued her when she was collapsing. At home, she makes lunch and eats it standing at the kitchen counter. Then she opens her laptop and pulls up the document she's been working on all week. Things I like. The list is longer now. Morning coffee before anyone wakes. The sound of Ethan laughing at his own jokes. Drives with no destination. Silence that doesn't need filling. The way rain sounds on the porch roof. Old bookstores that smell like paper and dust. She stares at the list, adds one more line, not needing anyone to notice. It's small, modest, probably not the kind of thing anyone would write down, but it's hers, and it's true. And for the first time in longer than she can remember, Mary feels like she's building something instead of defending herself from demolition. Her phone buzzes. She glances at it, half expecting Natalie again, but it's a text from a coworker, someone she's always been friendly with but never let get close. Coffee tomorrow? Been meaning to catch up. Mary reads it twice. The old version of herself would have said yes immediately, would have shown up early and apologized for taking up time, and turned the conversation into a performance of how okay she was. The new version, the one she's still learning to be, takes a moment to think about whether she actually wants to go. She does. She types back, "Sure. 10 a.m.? I know a place. They make plans." Mary sets her phone down and feels something unfamiliar. Anticipation without anxiety. The conversation tomorrow won't be audition or transaction. It will just be two people talking, no script required. 2 weeks after the highway conversation, Mary meets her coworker, Jenna, at the coffee shop by the post office. Jenna is already there when Mary arrives, sitting by the window with a laptop and a half-empty mug. She waves and Mary waves back, orders a latte and sits across from her. "Thanks for suggesting this," Jenna says. "I feel like we've worked together forever, but I don't actually know you." "I know what you mean." Mary wraps her hands around her mug. "I'm not great at letting people in." "Same." Jenna closes her laptop. "I always feel like I need a reason to reach out, like I have to have an agenda or a problem to solve, but then I realized I was just overthinking it." They talk for an hour, about work, about books, about nothing in particular. Mary doesn't mention Natalie. She doesn't narrate her recent crisis or offer up her pain as proof of vulnerability. She just talks and listens, and somewhere in the middle of it realizes she hasn't apologized once for taking up time or space or attention. When they leave, Jenna hugs her, a quick, easy gesture that doesn't ask for anything, and suggests they do it again next week. Mary agrees, and when she walks to her car, she feels lighter, like she's shed a costume she'd been wearing. So long she forgot it wasn't her actual skin. That night, Ethan asks if she misses Natalie. They're sitting at the kitchen table, the remains of dinner between them, takeout containers and crumpled napkins, and the comfortable mess of people who've stopped performing for each other. Mary considers the question while she clears plates. "I miss who I thought she was, but I don't miss who I had to be to keep her." That's a really clear answer. "I've had time to think about it." Mary sits back down, picks at the label on her water bottle. "For a long time, I thought friendship meant making yourself useful. Showing up, being available, proving you were worth keeping. And with Natalie, that worked. Until I realized I was the only one doing it. She wasn't showing up for me. She was tolerating me as long as I stayed small and broken and grateful." Ethan nods. "Do you think she knows? Like that she was doing that?" "Honestly, I don't think so. I think she thinks she was being a good friend. And maybe by some definition she was. She answered my calls, she showed up when I asked, but she also kept score, and she resented me for needing her, and she talked about me like I was a burden she was noble for carrying." Mary shrugs. "I don't think you can love someone and resent them at the same time." "Not really." "So what now?" "Now I figure out how to be a person who doesn't need constant validation, who doesn't apologize for existing, who can sit in a room without performing." She looks at him. "It's harder than it sounds." "I believe you." Ethan stands, starts clearing the table. But for what it's worth, I think you're doing a good job. Mary watches him move around the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, wiping down the counter, humming something under his breath. He's so much older than he was a year ago, and she wonders what he sees when he looks at her. If he sees someone falling apart or someone finally putting herself back together. Maybe both. Maybe that's okay. Later, alone in her room, Mary opens her photos one last time. She scrolls back to the highway trip, finds the picture she took at a red light, the dashboard, the road ahead, Ethan beside her. The bracelet is visible in the corner, catching the light, but Mary is centered now. Eyes forward, face calm, present in her own life. She saves the photo, then opens the folder labeled Archive and deletes it. All of it. Every picture with Natalie, every memory preserved in pixels, every piece of evidence that she was once someone who needed saving. It's not anger, it's not revenge. It's just the simple act of letting go. She closes the app and sits on her bed, listening to the house settle around her. Downstairs, Ethan is watching something, the sound of voices drifting up through the floor. Outside, a car passes, headlights sweeping across the ceiling. The world keeps moving, indifferent and endless. And for the first time in 12 years, Mary feels like she's moving with it instead of running, to keep up. The next morning, she wakes early and makes coffee in the quiet house. She sits at the kitchen table with her laptop and opens the document one more time. Things I like. The list has grown, adding lines each day as she pays attention to herself instead of narrating her life to an audience that isn't watching. Morning coffee before anyone wakes. The sound of Ethan laughing at his own jokes. Drives with no destination. Silence that doesn't need filling. The way rain sounds on the porch roof. Old bookstores that smell like paper and dust. Not needing anyone to notice. Conversations that don't require a script. The weight of putting something down and walking away. She reads the list, then adds one final line, being enough without trying. It's not a complete inventory, it's not a manifesto or a declaration of independence. It's just a list of small, true things, the kind of things she might have dismissed as trivial when she was too busy proving her worth to someone who wasn't keeping track. But they matter now. They matter because they're hers. She closes the laptop and finishes her coffee, watching the morning light creep across the kitchen floor. In a few hours, she'll drive Ethan to school, go to work, answer emails, eat lunch at her desk. Normal tasks, unremarkable moments. A life that doesn't look like much from the outside but feels, for the first time in years, like it actually belongs to her. Upstairs, she hears Ethan's alarm go off, the groan of him rolling out of bed, the creak of floorboards as he shuffles to the bathroom. She smiles. In 20 minutes, he'll come downstairs still half asleep, ask what's for breakfast, and scroll through his phone while she makes eggs. They'll talk about nothing important. He'll leave for school, she'll leave for work. And somewhere in the middle of all that ordinary, unremarkable life, Mary will keep building the list. Keep learning the shape of herself without apologizing for the space she takes up. Keep moving forward, eyes on the road ahead, no longer waiting for someone else to notice she's there. She picks up her phone, scrolls to the picture from the highway. The bracelet is gone now, mailed back, returned out of her life. But the image remains, her hand on the wheel, her face calm, the road stretching ahead into the distance. She sets the photo as her lock screen, not as a reminder of what she lost, but as proof of what she found. Herself finally, after 12 years of being narrated into someone else's story. Ethan comes downstairs, hair still damp from the shower, backpack slung over one shoulder. Morning. Morning. Mary stands, starts pulling eggs from the fridge. How'd you sleep? Good. He sits at the table, opens his laptop. You? Really good, actually. And it's true. She slept through the night, no waking at 3 a.m. to replay old conversations. No dreams about parking lots or highways or bracelets catching the light. Just sleep, deep and dreamless. The kind that comes when you finally stop performing and started resting. They eat breakfast together, talking about his history test and her meeting and the weather forecast that promises rain by afternoon. The conversation is easy, unremarkable, the kind of moment that won't make it into any story but matters more than all the dramatic ones that will. When Ethan leaves for school, Mary sits at the table a little longer. She opens her laptop one more time, looks at the list, and adds a final line. Mornings like this. Then she closes the document, shuts the laptop, and starts getting ready for work. The house is quiet around her. The coffee pot gurgles. The clock ticks forward. Somewhere across town, Natalie is probably waking up too, starting her own morning, living her own life. Mary hopes she's okay. She really does. But she doesn't need to know. She picks up her bag, checks for her keys, and pauses at the door. The spot where the box with the bracelet used to sit is empty now, just bare wood and a faint dust outline where it rested for days before she finally let it go. Mary runs her hand along the surface, feeling the smooth grain beneath her fingers. Then she opens the door and steps outside into the cool morning air, pulling the door shut behind her with a soft, final click.